It's a typical afternoon over the East River in New York City. Heading toward the water is a Kodiak 100 SE seaplane. On board are 8 passengers, including 16-year-old Chloe Todd and her grandmother, taking a routine flight back from a family friend's birthday party in East Hampton. Chloe is doing what any teenager might do on a scenic flight, casually recording the descent through the cabin window on her cell phone, expecting a smooth touchdown. That recording continues as the expected glide vanishes, replaced by a violent impact. Within seconds, the video transforms into a record of a survival effort. Instead of a graceful glide, the landing is violently rough. The plane skips and slams into the river, bouncing hard 3 separate times. This schematic shows the mechanics of the crash. As the plane hits the water, one of the pontoons, the floats underneath the aircraft, buckles. A loud boom echoes through the cabin. The sheer force of the impact causes the left wing strap to completely snap. Without that crucial support, the aircraft aggressively lists to one side. The left wing plunges straight into the East River. Inside the cabin, passengers look out their windows and see the dark, choppy water rapidly rising right up to the glass. A single piece of broken metal has suddenly turned their transport into a heavy, off-balance trap, and the river is threatening to swallow it whole. The cabin immediately fills with the shrill sound of emergency alarms. Over the noise, the captain is shouting instructions, telling everyone to quickly put on their life vests. Chloe is terrified, convinced they are going down. But amidst the noise, her priority narrows to a single objective, making sure her 76-year-old grandmother gets out safely. To keep the plane from flipping, they manipulate the center of gravity. This diagram displays the default layout of the 8 passengers. With the left side dipping low, everyone physically throws their body weight to the right side to counter the severe tilt. That collective shift in mass creates a fragile physical equilibrium. It stops the roll and buys them precious seconds to begin their evacuation. Then, an unusual interruption cuts through the panic. Right in the middle of a sinking plane, Chloe's cell phone starts ringing. It's her dad. She answers the call. With water literally lapping at the aircraft, she tells him, "Can I call you back? The plane kind of just crashed." She doesn't hang up. She drops the active phone into her bag, providing her father a live audio feed of the disaster while she physically guides her grandmother toward the exit. Chloe manages to maintain the connection with her father throughout the escape, navigating the flooded aisle while the call remains active in her bag. The passengers are not alone on the water for long. An NYPD helicopter is already hovering nearby and spots the distressed plane almost immediately. Within roughly 90 seconds, rescue boats are pulling up to the aircraft. All 8 people on board make it out with only minor injuries, including some bruised ribs for Chloe's grandmother. The focus now shifts to the mechanics of the crash. The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating exactly why the pontoon and wing strut on this months-old plane gave out during the landing. The official report will eventually explain the physics of the collapse, but that 90-second response time is what kept a structural failure from becoming a fatal tragedy. Beyond the broken struts and the swift rescue, there is a human element to this event, the instinctual documentation of the crisis by the passengers themselves. Carrying smartphones into a crisis makes passengers primary witnesses. They provide first-person data that exists alongside the findings of professional crash investigators. Chloe's video provides a view from the cabin that wouldn't have existed a generation ago. It shows the water level and the tilt of the floor exactly as the passengers experienced it. This crash in the East River serves as a snapshot of how we face emergencies today, holding a life vest to stay afloat while keeping a phone active to record the descent.
Welcome back. Okay, let's dive into this because today we are doing something absolutely incredible for our B2 and C1 English learners. You probably caught our recent coverage of the Kodiak seaplane that crash-landed on the East River in New York. All 8 passengers survived, which is just an amazing story in itself. But today, we aren't just retelling that story. We are going to deconstruct exactly how that story was told. We're going to look at the specific vocabulary, the idioms, the collocations, and the register used by the narrator to build a really gripping, high-stakes narrative. And the goal? So you can do exactly the same thing when you speak and write.
To do this, we're going to follow a straightforward roadmap with 4 key parts. First, setting the scene. Second, building tension. Third, the turn. And fourth, register and signposts.
So let's jump right in. Block 1, setting the scene. Any good storyteller knows that to make a disaster actually impactful, you first have to establish complete normalcy. The narrator sets the scene by saying the passengers were taking a routine flight back from a family friend's birthday party, expecting a smooth touchdown. Just notice how breezy and relaxed that feels, right? It establishes a baseline of undeniable normalcy before everything goes wrong.
Let's break down the 2 key collocations we just heard, a routine flight and a smooth touchdown. Meaning-wise, a routine flight is simply a normal, totally uneventful journey, and a smooth touchdown? That's a gentle, perfect landing. Now the register here, and remember, register is just the level of formality we use in different situations. The register is a neutral narrative. It's not overly poetic, it's not casual slang, it's perfectly balanced for setting your expectations.
So how can you actually use this yourself? Listen to this example. Despite the bad weather forecast, it was a routine flight with a smooth touchdown. You can seamlessly apply these collocations in your own everyday storytelling to signal that everything went exactly as planned.
Block 2, building tension.
This is where we shatter that calm atmosphere. The tension-building words we're looking at are skip and slam into, buckle, sheer force, and list to one side. Now, what's really interesting about these is how the sound of the words does the heavy lifting for you. Try saying them out loud. Skip and slam, buckle. Those hard consonant sounds literally mimic the sudden, violent impact of a crash.
Let's see how the author strings them together in the story. Read along with me. The plane skips and slams into the river. One of the pontoons buckles, the sheer force of the impact. You can literally feel the violence in the language itself.
Let's formally define these. To skip and slam into means to bounce and then hit something violently. To buckle means to collapse or crumple under immense physical pressure. And sheer force refers to absolute, unmitigated power. The register here completely shifts into a dramatic or technical narrative. You aren't just saying the plane crashed, you know? You're giving a visceral, technical recounting of a structural failure.
And the best part is, you don't just have to use these for planes. Listen to this fresh example. The sheer force of the wind caused the old barn's roof to buckle before a falling tree skipped and slammed into the wall. See how we just use those dynamic verbs in a completely different context to build massive tension? Now, the tension doesn't stop after the initial impact. Listen to this next quote. The aircraft aggressively lists to one side, turned their transport into a heavy, off-balance trap. The author is using a very specific nautical and aviation term here to describe really dangerous tilting motion.
So to list to one side means a vessel is tilting dangerously, usually taking on water. And that beautiful metaphor, an off-balance trap, means a highly unstable, enclosed space that has suddenly become deeply dangerous. The register for these expressions is formal and highly descriptive. They're absolutely fantastic tools for elevating a B2 or C1 English essay.
And this brilliantly illustrates how versatile the vocabulary truly is. For instance, as the cargo shifted unexpectedly, the small boat began to list to one side, turning the cabin into an off-balance trap. You instantly paint a terrifying picture for your listener.
Block 3, the turn. So the narrative now shifts from cold, mechanical failure to desperate human survival. This shift requires a completely different set of vocabulary, focused entirely on reaction and decision-making. Listen to how the author describes the passengers fighting back. Quote, her priority narrows to a single objective. They manipulate to counter the severe tilt. That collective shift buys them precious seconds. The language here becomes intensely focused, which perfectly mirrors the focus of the passengers themselves. Let's break these down. To narrow to a single objective means to block out all distractions and focus entirely on one critical goal. To counter the tilt means to physically push back against an angle or imbalance. And to buy precious seconds means to do something that gains you a tiny bit of vital, life-saving time. The register here is a tense, action-driven narrative. It completely encapsulates human desperation and real-time problem-solving. Here is a real-world example of how to use this. To buy precious seconds, the firefighters countered the tilt of the falling beam, narrowing their focus to a single objective, saving the trapped dog. This is exactly how you make an action-driven story sound highly fluent and incredibly engaging.
But there's another fascinating part to this human element. On the live audio feed during the sinking, 16-year-old Chloe tells her dad on the phone, the plane kind of just like crashed. Think about that authentic teenage speech compared to stiff textbook English, which would just be, the plane crashed. Those little filler words, kind of, just, like, they are softeners. They actually show her brain trying to process the trauma in real time. Recognizing and understanding these authentic softeners is a massive step toward mastering C1 spoken English.
Block 4. Register and signposts.
Let's summarize the tools we've collected today. If you're writing a formal essay or maybe giving a professional interview, you want those formal neutral phrases we talked about: to list to one side, sheer force, a routine flight. But if you're at a cafe telling your friends a crazy story, you lean into informal casual speech. Phrases like make it out, cut through the panic, or throwing in softeners like it kind of just like crashed. Mixing these up inappropriately is what makes a learner sound unnatural, but keeping them categorized appropriately, that's what makes you sound fluent.
And that brings us to the end of our structural breakdown. So I'll leave you with this final important question. How will you use these structural blocks, normalcy, tension, and human action, the next time you tell a high-stakes story in English? Seriously, grab a notebook, try writing out a short story using at least one phrase from each of our blocks today, and practice taking your narrative skills to the absolute next level. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.